Hello, this is Coach John, and welcome back to my video series on finding high quality local foods. In the first part, we went over greenwashing and what I call label BS. What I went over is not an exhaustive list. That's just to give you an idea of some things to think about when purchasing food. In this video, we're going to touch on grocery store standards and practices. So, I was a butcher in a major grocery store for about 6 months, and I saw and participated in some pretty horrific practices. But first, I'll start with produce. So things you want to consider with the produce that you're buying is a lot of produce has wax on it. This is used to preserve freshness and color and fight fungus or whatever they're claiming. But those waxes, in my opinion, should not be eaten. They're proclaimed food safe, but there's a lot of things that are proclaimed food safe that really cause havoc in the body. So carnauba wax, shellac, resin, and petrochemical waxes. When I'm buying a product, typically it's fruit that I see that have waxes on it. I do have a slide that has a list. I will either not buy them. I'll buy them from someone who's not dipping their fruit in wax, or I will completely strip off the skin. Some of these waxes don't wash off. On things like root vegetables, they scrub all the dirt off and then they dip the produce in chlorine in order to supposedly help preserve freshness and prevent rot and in a way sterilize it or pasteurize it. It's something that just really gross. Chlorine should not be in our water or our food, and it's something I really wish that we would wrap our head around and stop doing. So now for the meat stuff. Meat recycling was the most horrific, disgusting practice that admittedly, I partook of. Sorry, because I was afraid of losing my job. At the time, I needed the job and didn't want to dissent. But it's a gross practice that happens across the board. So what this is we'll get a chicken, let's say chicken drumsticks. Nobody likes chicken drumsticks. They end up sitting on the shelf quite a while. It comes in the distributor's packaging, let's say a Bell and Evans chicken drumsticks. It comes in, it's got its sell by date. Today is May 9th. Let's say it goes out on May 10th. So today I'm going to go out and I'm going to pull that package off the shelf before it goes to its sell by date and we have to get rid of it. I'm going to open it up and I'm going to smell it. If it stinks, then I might just go right to step 3. But if it doesn't stink, I'm going to go to step 2, which is take 2 of those packages and repack them into a store brand packaging. These are typically the family packs. They're sold for bulk discounts, and that is not always the oldest product. Meat recycling is not always what is in there, but you just never know if you're getting something that's recycled if it was packaged in the store. It happens more than you'd like to think. Uh, I have seen these repackaged family packs be reopened, smelled again, and then, okay, they're getting pretty close, but we don't want to take a loss on this. And we're going to either sauce them or spice them and send them back out in another wrapping, or we'll put them in our display case as the prepared foods. Something like a butterfly chicken breast with a garlic parmesan breadcrumb thing on it. That might be the oldest stale crap that they have in the back of the store. And sadly, that's their incentive. When you have a buildup of product, you want to sell your oldest stuff first so that way you don't have to take the loss on it. And, if you can catch up on your product and have decently fresh stuff on the shelf after selling the oldest stuff, why wouldn't you just sell the oldest stuff, as often as you can? And this way, you don't have to uh, take a loss on it, because some money's better than none, and a lot of times this prepared stuff goes for a higher dollar price despite being the oldest stuff. It's pretty gross, and I did it more than I'd like to say. It's very often that it happens. As far as produce on the shelves, things that are harvested internationally, a lot of our produce comes from Mexico, a lot of it comes from California. That's at least 3 days old. I say at least 3 days because, it depends on where you are in the country. It depends on where it was harvested. I'm not gonna say everything was harvested in Mexico or California. Some stuff comes from South America. I mean, some of our fruits, Ecuadorian, Peruvian, you just it will even say the source country, but that's not the case in food co-ops. Food co-ops, small organic groceries tend to buy locally if they can, and this product is going to be much, much more fresh. So at the national or international level, that product is harvested and sent to a packaging plant. It receives whatever rubber band or plastic wrap or wax dip or chlorine dip or it's cleaned, whatever. It goes through an inspection and then a processing and then it's packed for shipping. Now, Mexico or wherever it's packaged, I don't know where they package it. Let's say it's in Texas. Texas to New Jersey, that is a minimum of a 2-day drive. So it's gone through all of its packaging, and then you have a minimum 2-day drive, and that's if you're haul ass in it. I mean, truckers cap out at 700 miles a day. I've done that drive in 2 days. It's hard, too hard for a professional to do. It's more than likely 3 days or 4 days. You'd have to get an exact mileage count, but the point is that the produce that you're buying on the shelf is very, very far from fresh. An example of the opposite of that would be something like the Western Montana Growers Cooperative selling as far out as Bozeman. That was the end range. So the farm that I worked on sold through the WMGC, and our product was harvested and shipped to the distribution facility in Missoula, and it was on grocery store shelves the next day. We did very minimal packaging and the cleaning was all done on the farm. We didn't use produce waxes or anything like that. It was just get the dirt off, make it presentable, get it on the truck, and then they get it to the grocery store the next day. Something like Bozeman, maybe it was 2 days late, but still, that is going to be a far more fresh product than anything that's grown at a national level or international. So finding a food co-op as far as produce is going to get you something if it's all certified organic and that's all you care about across the board, they're going to be adhering to the same standard. The fresher product is going to do more for your health. So here I've got some pictures that I'd like to talk about a little bit. The middle picture is just a list of wax ingredients as well as how to remove it and a list of what these waxes go on. Something like plums, you can't really peel them. I mean, some plums are 1.5 inches, 2 inches tall, and you don't really peel plums. So some of these things you don't eat the skin. That's fine. Let's preserve them. Hopefully, we use a biodegradable wax. But the picture on the left is something I really want to draw attention to. That is this newfangled craze of tomatoes on the vine. If you've ever grown tomatoes, you would know that tomatoes ripen sequentially away from the stem. So the tomatoes that are closest to the stem are going to ripen first. So in that picture, the bottom right tomato would ripen first, then the middle left, then back to the right, then the top left one would ripen last. These tomatoes are all at the same level of ripeness, which means that vine was cut when those tomatoes were all green, and those tomatoes were sprayed with ethylene gas, which is used to ripen fruit that was picked green. Ethylene is given off by fruit during the ripening process. You see this with bananas. You put them in a brown paper bag, they ripen quicker because that gas is being trapped and it's stimulating the production of more ethylene gas and the conversion of starches to sugars in bananas. In something like tomatoes, they will only ripen off the vine if they start ripening on the vine. So that process has to start. These are picked green. So the process of ripening for fruit is very important for the nutritional content of fruit. It changes the starch and fiber and sugar content of the fruit. With bananas, specifically, you go from a prebiotic fiber to a sugary starch. With tomatoes, that's also, you know, mineral content. With strawberries, that's mineral content and sugar, and the more ripe fruit is going to be more nutritious. Now, why is that? That's a reproductive strategy for the plant. The plant is looking to have its fruit ingested and then an animal poop out the seeds in the fertilizer that is the manure. And so an animal will try to find the most ripe berries or tomatoes. I don't know of any animals that will eat your tomatoes, but the the strawberry plant wants you to eat the most ripe fruit. So it's going to put all this nutrition in to get you to eat the fruit so that the seeds will be fertilized by that nutrition, which is converted to manure or compost, soil, whatever you want to call it, passed out the back end, fertilized, it gets wet, and it sprouts a new strawberry plant. If you're eating not ripe fruit, the plant is putting its nutrition elsewhere. It's putting it into stem development, root development, leaf development. It's not putting it into the fruit, and you're not getting the nutrition that you really should be getting from your food. This ethylene gas kind of subverts that process of ripening and deprives you, the consumer, of the nutrition that should be coming from that plant. The picture on the right is just a visual representation of the wax. I took my peeling knife and scraped off some of the wax. I don't know what kind of wax it was, but I never eat this stuff. If it is an organic biodegradable thing, hey, that's wonderful. I'll put it in my compost pile. It's not something that I want to ingest on the regular. Like carnauba wax is something that reminds me of like what I put on my car. Just like canola oil is something that I love to put on my door hinges that squeak. These things, they have other purposes. In my opinion, they're not suitable for consumption by a human. That's why I peel all of my apples, and anything that's on this list, I will either not eat the skin or I will peel it. So let's get into a little bit more of what's going on with produce at a local level. There's really three different types of farms you'll find in the produce game at a local level. People that are putting out for CSA, people that are putting out for wholesale, or a U-pick operation. And any one of these people can show up at a farmer's market, but the the main difference is really CSA versus wholesale. So wholesale growers have commitments to produce for the entire growing season a single type of crop. My favorite example that I love to use is lettuce. Lettuce likes spring and fall. It does not like the heat of summer. It is too stressful, and it will go to seed much more quickly. You'll end up with a really stemmy and very bitter lettuce if you're eating lettuce in the heat of summer. So a wholesale producer will sell you that bitter, stemmy lettuce because they have to grow it to meet their grocery store requirements to earn their money. Whereas a CSA, they're not selling wholesale, they're selling directly to consumer through weekly boxes. So let's say you're spending $16 a week on your CSA box. You get a little box of vegetables each week, either at your pickup point or delivered directly to you. Who knows? It's August. You get a head of lettuce and you're like, "Whoa, I haven't had a salad in weeks." And you bite into this and it is the most bitter, disgusting crap that you've ever had in your life. You're like, "This sucks. Why did they send me this nasty stuff?" You're going to be far less likely to buy from that farm again because they sold you not great product that's grown not in the right season. What you're looking for in the heat of summer, watermelon, tomatoes, peppers, things that really love the heat. And so a CSA is going to get you a higher diversity of crops. It's better for the land because the diversity of the crops that's grown there. is going to be larger than producers that are growing for wholesale. You know, if you're lucky on a wholesale farm, you'll have 7 crops allowing for a 7-year rotation of their beds. That may not be the case, that may be the case. With a CSA, you're looking at potentially 20, 30, maybe more crops where these people are trying to line up the season so that they get maximum yield for minimum input and they deliver a high quality product week after week. Again, that varies farm to farm. You may just have to find a really good CSA. U-pick operations typically are fruit and they're growing for wholesale. So that would be like peaches, apples, pears, blueberries, strawberries, and they'll give you you can go out and pick this much per pound and you're going to save versus the grocery store. But something you want to keep in mind is what kind of amendments are they using? Are they certified organic? How are they managing pests? With U-pick operations, because they're growing wholesale, they're going to have 300 peach trees of all the same variety because what they're looking to do is ship out a couple pallets of peaches for a couple grand, and the U-pick operation is just another way for them to bring in revenue. It's an outlet because they're going to hit their target of, let's say, 6 tons of peaches to these grocery stores or whatever national chain they're selling to, and then they can sell at a higher price point to the people that are coming in like, yeah, we're going to do a Saturday. We're going to get out in the sun. We're going to pick some peaches. We're going to sneak a couple. Don't nobody watch it. Okay. You still want to be careful about how are they managing pests. When you grow a ton of the same crop in an area, it is very, very attractive to pests. And more often than not, they have to resort to uh, harsh chemicals, whether they're herbicides, pesticides, some kind of spray. Fungal sprays are very big on orchards. And you really want to ask what they're doing to manage pests on an operation that large. Questions that you can ask your farmer: potting soil source, where are they getting their potting soil? Is it certified organic? Is it something that's local or is it bagged? You're really only concerned about that as far as the nutritional quality of the plant early on in its life. And a farmer that's in this game to earn some money, make a living, they're going to have a high quality potting soil. But if they're not certified organic, it may be because of their potting soil and that plant starting out in soil that is laden with chemicals. Heirlooms versus hybrids. This is just something you can bring up and discuss with them. Are they saving their own seeds? You can only save seeds from heirlooms. You can't save it from hybrids. So if you wanted to get a seed from your local farmer, you could say, all right, the Black Krim tomato, it's delicious heirloom tomato. I love them. You go buy some Black Krims from them and you want to save the seed, and this is not how you save the seed from a tomato, but you want to save the seed, you have to buy an heirloom seed from them and then put it out in your field. Hybrids like a carnival squash, you can't save their seeds. They will breed to either a acorn or whatever the other parent is. Another question I like to ask is how often these people are tilling. People that till very heavily, I find that the nutritional quality and the water usage is just not quite optimal on these farms. When you till, you break up the crumb structure of the soil, and it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 months for the soil to knit itself back together. And this crumb-like structure allows for airflow, and it allows for better water trapping. It allows for more earthworms. When you till, you kill earthworms, and earthworm castings are a huge source of nutrition for the plants that are growing in that soil. So some tillage, I understand. We have some really nasty weeds that we don't quite have an answer for right now. But if you're tilling over and over and over again, like using the tiller to manage weeds in between beds, like you're destroying the field and destroying the structure, and you're gonna have to use more water. And that's not something that's a game breaker for me, but I like to just ask that because it gives me a little insight. Are these people putting in a lot of effort, or are they just like, hey, I'll just use the tractor, whatever. And we're going to get into tractor usage and equipment in a later part. The next big thing is amendments. How are they getting their fertility? The organic certification allows for the use of manure from non-organic chicken houses. So these chickens are cooped up inside. They're eating GMO, potentially GMO laced grains that are they're sprayed with herbicides of all kind, Roundup, atrazine, 2,4-D. You know, we can go on and on about all the chemicals that is used to grow corn and soy and these commodity grains. And organic produce growers can take that manure and spread it on their field. And that's not, you know, this is what I was saying in the first video about the organic certification is not about the lack of pesticides and herbicides in the crop. These crops don't have to test for no glyphosate. These crops do not have to test for 0,2,4-D. It is a procedural thing. These crops can be grown in manure from, you know, conventional chicken houses. You don't have to have organic manure on your field. Admittedly, that's really hard to find. And I understand why they wouldn't do it, but that's not something I'm comfortable eating. At our farm in Montana, all of the manure that was spread on our field was from the farm. That is actually not even the organic standard. That is the standard for biodynamic farming, an enclosed system of manure for building fertility. That gets into the diversity and microbiome in the soil. And that's a whole other topic that's really fascinating. The only thing that you've really got to understand is that the manure that's being used on the field should not be from a non-organic source. I've seen crops get burned from non-organic manure being spread on the field. My wife had a tomato crop get completely decimated because the horse manure that they were feeding was so heavy with herbicide that the entire bed died. I mean, you know, this stuff sounds like it's impossible, but when you see it firsthand, these chemicals are extremely dangerous. And that's not even touching on mineral salts. Mineral salts are NPK fertilizers. They're what most commodity growers spread on their field. They smell amazing, and they are just the most horrendous fertility method. They destroy earthworms, they destroy the topsoil, and it amazes me that we don't seem to take seriously the fact that we are salting our fields. This is something that Napoleon did when he would conquer a people. He would salt their fields so that they could not grow food for themselves. We are doing that under the guise of fertility, under the guise of being able to grow more food. We're destroying our topsoil with these NPK fertilizers. We're killing earthworms, the chief physician of the soil. They're the most bountiful nutritional source in soil, earthworm castings, and we kill them with NPK fertilizers. This stuff gets into our groundwater. It's in our drinking water because of that, and it's destroying the ocean. So I wouldn't expect to see that at a local farmer who's growing for a market garden or a CSA, but it's still something you want to ask. What's your fertility source? With some crops, you'll find that some farms will use a foliar spray, and that is made with sodium nitrate. Those crops tend to be something like garlic. So we use the foliar spray. It's allowed under the organic certifying agency, the organic certification, sorry. And the composition, it's fish emulsion and this sodium nitrate and some other stuff. And it stimulates the growth of the foliage of the plant. So we would spray the garlic so that it gets nice big leaves, plenty of leaves, the solar panels, so that way when it transitions into bulb development, it is able to capture more sunlight and develop very nice, large garlic bulbs. If something is being sprayed with foliar spray, you do not want to eat the foliage, anything that comes into contact with that. Ideally, we wouldn't have to spray that stuff at all. It would just be grown in great soil. But again, this is just something you'd like to ask your farmer about and to know that they're using. Finally, you can ask them about what's their soil type. Different farms can either be sandy or clay or rocky. Our farm was incredibly rocky. It was a high clay soil, and the soil composition is going to influence the quality of the product that comes out of it. So a sandy soil is wonderful for root crops because if you ask Rudolf Steiner in the biodynamic system, sand actually conducts the energy of Saturn, which is very beneficial for the development of nutritious roots. I don't understand it, but sand for me, sand allows for nice round beets and straight carrots and a at least aesthetic product. But the problem with sandy soils is they lose nutrition very quickly. With a sandy soil, you'll have to use some sort of amendment every time you turn over a bed. When my wife worked in a farm in North Carolina, they had a very sandy soil, and they were putting feather and bone meal in before every single succession of crops in order to keep the nutrition. Otherwise, it just washes through. There's nothing holding the nutrition in the soil. Whereas a high clay soil is going to hold nutrition and water way better, but it's not going to develop, nice straight carrots. Your carrots are going to, wiggle and turn, and they're going to be really ugly, but they're going to be fine to eat. They're going to be tasty, but they capture water. They're much better for leaf and fruit development. And again, this is just something that you can talk to your farmer about. So that ends this part of the video. In the next video, I will get into animal husbandry from a general perspective, and I'll see you there. Thanks for watching.